I have a guest today. I have Leah Forney, and she's going to be talking about dating after sexual assault. Go ahead and cue my theme music. Hey, Rebel. Welcome to Untoxify Your Relationship. Here, we will talk about all things healthy and how to get that toxic mess out of you and your partnership. I'm your host, Melissa Webb, a practicing licensed mental health therapist with 10 years experience. All right, let's go ahead and hop into it. Hey, y'all, this is Untoxify Your Relationship, and I have a guest today because I know y'all get tired of hearing me talk, so I put people on here so you can hear other people talk, all right? I have my bestie, my sis, Leah.
Hey.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
I'm excited too. So listen, we might as well just let the people know, like, prepare to laugh, prepare to have, Holy Ghost moments because he's just gonna show up. He gonna do what he do. He gonna say what he gonna say. You know what I mean? But prepare for the real and the raw and the uncut. That's what we gonna do today on Untoxify Your Relationships. I'm just saying.
Hey, turn up. So tell the people who you are, your name, and what you do, and where you're from, and all the things.
All the things, right? Listen, I feel like I add too many titles to my name at this juncture in my life. But hey, y'all, I'm Leah M. Forney. If you do not know me, I do a plethora of things. I'm a 9-time published author. I'm a sought after expert trainer and speaker. I'm the founder of Save Me, which is an acronym that stands for Sexual Assault Advocacy for Victims Everywhere. I'm an executive producer in the film industry. I also am a podcaster. I host the internationally recognized show Hey Queen Thrive, which is wrapping up its fourth season. But when I'm not that, I always tell people like my favorite title is that I'm just a woman of God. I'm a woman of God from Queens, New York. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to the New Yorkers out there. Just out here doing my thing, living my best life, walking in my truth and in my power. That's what I do, and that's who I am.
I love that. I thought you were from Brooklyn. I didn't know you was from Queens.
Yeah, so I was born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens. I read both boroughs. Brooklyn, we stand 10 toes down on business. Queens, we get the money. Like that's you know what I mean? Like I rep them both. Like that's what we do.
Now, Leah's hilarious. Leah, I know you mentioned that you are a sought after advocator for sexual assault. So,
Yeah.
tell me like your work that you've been doing with sexual assault victims and just sexual assault, period.
Child. So that journey started like 10 years ago, right? So a year after I was sexually assaulted, I got sexually assaulted January 27, 2013 in my apartment in North Carolina. And after trying to get justice through the justice system, which was an epic fail, and I knew it was going to be an epic fail because when I got sexually assaulted, it took me 2 days to report. And it took me 2 days because the first thing I thought was, I'm a Black woman in America. Who's going to believe me? Right? Like, that was literally my thought process. So after like getting the courage to like make the report, the male detective that came to my home to do the report, he asked me 5 times, was I sure that I was raped?
Mm.
And he said, because I said I went on one date with the guy. I'm like, really? Like, why you gotta ask me 5 times, right? And then I had a female detective who was like supposed to oversee the case, and she was just very cold, like very cold, very callous. And people always ask me like, who should work with female survivors or victims, and they always be like, do you think women? And I'm like, no, because unfortunately, women, they don't have no empathy, they don't have no compassion. And on one hand, like, because I work in that sector, like I can kind of understand why, because they work in a male dominated industry. You
Mm-hmm.
get what I'm saying? So you kind of gotta be like one of the hard ass men, but like at the same time, it's like you're also a female. And
Yeah.
how would you feel if this happened to you? So I went through the process of trying to get the justice through the criminal justice system. And just to get a restraining order was a hassle. And I
Really?
remember my day in court, and I had this white male judge presiding over the case. And he literally looked me from the bench, said, I don't believe you. I believe you're a woman scorned, and walked into his chambers. And I'm just sitting there with the look of shock on my face. My perpetrator's over there snickering because he feels like he's won. And then he came back out and he was like, "Oh, you're still here? Case dismissed." So I break down crying because I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and as I'm having this meltdown, I have a white male sheriff that says to me, "Oh, if you don't get it together, I'm gonna lock you up." I'm like, the irony. Like, so you gonna lock me up for having this emotional moment, right? But the person that sexually assaulted me is walking away scot free. So in that moment, I had to make a decision. I had to decide what I was going to do with these pieces, and I decided that I was going to go on this journey to not only heal but to begin to reclaim my power. And so a year after my sexual assault, I was already in therapy. I was connected to the local rape crisis center, and I was doing the work. I was working through the trauma and all the emotions, all the feelings that it came with. And a year later, the rape crisis center was putting on a Take Back the Night. And if you are not familiar with Take Back the Night is a event that happens every April during the month of sexual assault, where it's kind of like a survivor speak out. It's an opportunity for survivors to share their story, to be rallied with the community, to fight to end sexual violence. And so I felt like I was ready. And so
Mm-hmm.
I started publicly sharing my story. And from that moment, I just kept sharing my story in different ways and different media outlets, and I wrote it in my first book. Like, I just kept doing it. And then June of 2022, girl, June 2022, that same police department that failed me the first time
Mm-hmm.
called me up. This was 9 years post rape. And was like, we finally tested your rape kit, and we have a DNA match, and we want to know what would you like to do.
Ooh, 9 years later.
9 years later,
Jesus.
so I'm sitting on the phone, and I literally said to the detective that I'm talking to, I was like, "You always had his DNA because I didn't lie."
Mm.
Like, it happened. Like, you always had his DNA. And so in that moment, I was kind of like, I was praying, and I was like, all right, God, what am I supposed to do with this? Because it's 9 years later. Like, I didn't moved on. I on the other side of this thing. I'm good. You get what I'm saying? So I'm sitting here like, what
Mm-hmm.
am I supposed to do with this? And I literally sought my family, and literally one of my good girlfriends who does gun violence advocacy because her son was gunned down in Detroit. She was like, Leah, this is an opportunity to like really become an advocate and an activist and like step into this bigger than what you've been doing. So she encouraged me to start partnering with some organizations that were already doing the work, and I did. And I got connected with a few organizations locally to me in Maryland, and I just was like, look, I'm a survivor. This is what I've been through. I've also been impacted by this backlog of untested kits that's here in America. How can I help? And so they just started using me as their go-to expert trainer to like really share real world experience. Because I always say it's one thing to know knowledge and statistics and data, it's another thing when you have someone that has lived experience.
Right.
And so that was kind of my intro into advocacy and activism. I kind of was doing it on a lower scale just by telling my story, but then God was like, nah, your voice is way too powerful, and you represent a demographic that gets ignored and invalidated all the time, which is women of color and people of color. So that is kind of how I got into it. And I could truly say I've been blessed because God has allowed me to train so many people. I've done trainings with law enforcement, victim advocates, attorney generals. I've done training with colleges and universities. So, like, but yeah, that's how it started.
Okay, let's go back to you being sexually assaulted and then going to the justice system because I have a similar experience. I was sexually assaulted and I went to the police and I was scared to go because I worked at a place where it could get out in the news and all of that. And but my friend encouraged me to go ahead and do it, did it, nothing happened. Like the
Yeah.
prosecutor didn't take my case because one, I didn't do a rape kit because I took a shower when I got home, and the prosecutor basically like, if you didn't take a shower, you would have been okay. But kind of take me back to because you were dating this guy, it sounds like, or y'all went on a date.
Mm-hmm.
And like, did you see? Because a lot of times people say you should have known that this person was going to rape you. Like, tell the people, like, you don't know because.
Yeah, no. There really wasn't no red flags. I
Mhm.
think what it was for me was intuition, right? So like I met the guy after my hoopty broke down. And if you know anything about living in the South, like you really do need a car to get everywhere. Like you could rely on public transportation, but it's not like the city. It's not you're getting a bus every 15 minutes. You're like, it's like every hour, right?
Right.
So when my hoopty broke down, I was like, all right, what's the next best thing? Let me go and rent a car. That's how I met him. He worked at the local rent a car place. And so when that was unsuccessful, he offered to drive me to my house. That's how like he knew where I lived. And then we, were talking, kind of making small talk. He knew that I was fairly new to the state of North Carolina. I had been living there like a year and a half.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so he was like, interested in me. I was single at the time. So I was like, all right, what could it hurt to go on one date with the guy? But it was in the conversations that we were having that kind of just was like, I don't know if this the guy that I really want to be connected to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it was just so weird. And so I just kind of like after that one date, I was just like, yeah, no, there's no romantic interest here. Like I'm good or whatever. He took that as rejection. And
Mm.
so even prior to him like sexually assaulting me, when he came to my house on the day that he raped me, I actually had just got a phone call that someone I love had passed away. Right. So I get off the phone with that person and then ends up calling. So he hears this moment of vulnerability, right? He hears that I'm distraught and he uses it to like get his way over to my house because he's like, oh, let me just come and console you. Now, mind you, I was only home because I was waiting on somebody to come pick me up from church. You see how the
Mm.
devil is? Like, I was waiting on him to come pick someone to come pick me up from church. And so little did I know he was already outside my apartment. So when he got over to my house, and he took the moment of consoling to be like, I don't appreciate you rejecting me. Like, I don't appreciate how you just didn't want to deal with me no more. And so in that moment, I could say my intuition kicked in and was kind of like, girl, you in danger. Did it
Mm.
did it sit here and be like you about to be raped? No. It was just like, you kind of should probably get your hell up out of this situation.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and quickly.
Mhm.
So I kept asking him to leave. It was on the third time that I asked him to leave that he got up off the couch. And so I thought he was leaving. I was like, whew, all right, we about to leave. And
Right.
that's when he grabbed me and proceeded to rape me.
Wow.
But there was no like red flags. He was actually what people don't think about when they think of a perpetrator, and that is the person that is charming, right? That's gentlemanlike, right? Right, like that's who he was. He was like, oh yeah, I'm a deacon in the church and I love the Lord. Like,
Not a deacon.
right. So he was hitting me
Jesus.
with all of those things, but the whole
Mm.
time he was a married man hiding his wife and kids. Like, and I found that out through social media because I wanted my, and it's crazy because she's still one of my friends on social media today. She was a coworker of mine at the time who is his cousin. You get what I'm saying? And that's how I found out. But he had never mentioned nothing about married, wife, kids, no nothing. And the only reason why the police department had a DNA match is because he had offended before. So like, but he wasn't that guy. Like some people do believe that. They believe that like, and I think that's the bad thing about sexual assault and how it's perceived is that in 2024 we still believe it's the boogeyman, it's the person in the white van, it's the stranger danger, and it really isn't because 58% of every survivor knows their perpetrator and they know them because they've had some form of a connection, relationship, something, whether that was a dating relationship, a friendship, it was something, there was some ounce of trust there enough for someone to know that they could take advantage of you. And so, there was no red flags. He was the Mr. Charmer.
Yeah, and you know what? A lot of people who I have worked with as well as myself, right? Because I've been raped as well, it's like, yeah, I knew him. Like, or we worked together and we were just cool, and it's never like the stranger on the street who's lurking behind the wall, just ready to pounce, like, "Pear, I'm about to get you," right? It's someone that you know.
Absolutely.
It's someone
Absolutely.
that you know. So I'm glad that you were able, girl, give us statistics. Give us some more. You got some more? Because that's
No,
hey.
because I think that people forget that the stranger dangers, literally from a law enforcement standpoint, is less than 5%. So less
Mm,
than 5% of rape cases that are reported is from a stranger. If you got 100 rape cases, only 5 of them, maybe less,
right.
like, are
Right.
going to actually be stranger. Like, you
Yeah.
don't know this person at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, the 95 of them, oh yeah, you know the person. It's the same when people say stuff like, oh, women lie about being raped. Again, we know from me working with law enforcement, less than 5% of those cases are ever found it out that the person was lying.
Yeah.
So 95%, the person ain't lying. And here's the thing, the DNA don't lie. Like, that's one of the things that I encourage survivors and victims. Get the rape kit done. Yes, it's invasive. Yes, you're gonna feel like, oh my God, why do I keep telling this story about what happened and all that? But at the end of the day, it is the DNA that's gonna help them catch a perpetrator. The fact that my perpetrator's DNA is now sitting in the CODIS, which is the National Crime Index system, like, he could offend all he want. The,
Mm-hmm.
the government now has your DNA, sir. So
Mm.
anything you do going forward, you're liable to get caught up. So whether you get caught up today or you get caught up tomorrow, you're gonna eventually get caught up. And so that's why I always tell people, like, DNA don't lie.
Yeah.
Like, how else would the person's DNA be in your private area if they weren't there?
Correct. Correct. So tell me, so let's say someone is sexually assaulted. What should they do? Like, what are the steps they should
Oh,
take
yeah.
to move? I mean, not even just move forward. Like, okay, I just been raped. What do I do? Like, what would you tell
So
someone?
I would tell them the first thing, do not take a shower. And I
I did. That was
know
me.
I did it too.
That was me. Yeah.
And I know that is probably like primal instinct of like, let me go take a shower because I want, because you really are taking that shower subconsciously because you want
Yes.
the feeling and the ick and all of that of this person off of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But from a criminal justice standpoint, your body is now evidence.
Mm.
And so when you take a shower, you're washing away the evidence,
Yeah.
right? So don't take a
Clean up the
shower.
crime scene. It's like
Yeah,
clean up the blood from the crime scene,
right.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Like, don't do it. Don't touch it. Don't do nothing. So that was the first thing I would tell them. The second thing I would tell them is definitely make the report. Like, even with all the, like, I know nobody's gonna believe me, I put myself in a position, da 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 da, like, I went through all of that. It was not just, oh, I'm a Black woman in America. It was like, girl, you let this man in your house.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
The shame and
the
the
shit, yeah.
embarrassment and all of that. Yeah.
You're gonna go through that throughout the whole process, but still make the report. Make the
Mm-hmm.
report. I would definitely say get to your local emergency room. Now, here's the thing. It's kind of tricky with the local emergency room because not every emergency room has what we call a SANE nurse. And a SANE nurse is a sexual assault nurse practitioner, right? So this is your forensic nurses, and not every nurse has a forensic nurse on staff. And
Right.
forensic nurses are the ones who do the rape kits, right?
Right.
So I would still say go to your local emergency room, but let them know that you've been sexually assaulted. Because if they don't have one, they can get you to the next hospital that does have one, right? And so go through that process, get the rape kit because again, DNA don't lie. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna come back that somebody was there, right? Um, Definitely get you some support. One thing I will say that I have to credit the same nurse that took care of me, and it's so funny because years later, me and her sat on a panel together, and she remembered me, and
Wow.
we had such an emotional moment. But she immediately connected me with my local rape crisis center and got some advocates to come and sit with me. And those advocates were absolutely amazing. And that was why I ended up partnering with them for a very long time. Because they were just so amazing. They were so compassionate. They were very like, do you need anything? Do you want something to drink? Like, they held my hand and walked me through the process. And that's one of the things that I always tell law enforcement, that that's a part of your job. Like,
Yeah.
we don't know what we don't know. Like,
Yeah.
it's so important to give a survivor information. Like, it's so important, because the thing with law enforcement is they think that these things are common sense. And I always tell people, like, I would never have known where my local rape crisis center was unless I got raped.
Right.
Like, it's not like the grocery store. Like,
Right.
oh, I know what grocery stores are near my house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you go to the grocery store. You know what I mean? But if you've never had an experience like that, you're not going throughout your neighborhood to be like, oh, there goes the rape crisis center. Like, you're not gonna know.
Let me remember that for future references, right? Like,
Right. That's just not common sense.
right.
And so law enforcement, I always tell them, stop thinking that these things are common sense. It's common sense to you
Mm-hmm.
because of the work you do. It's not common sense to the everyday person. So you have to give them information. But I would definitely say, like, definitely get some support for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Like, even if you don't go the therapy route, like, find someone that you can confide in, because the emotional toll that sexual assault takes on a survivor, to me, is like 10 times worse than the physical toll. Like, I struggled for a while with PTSD. Like, even now I tell people I still have residue of PTSD. Like, I still have moments of being startled, even in my current relationship. Like, he has learned, like, announce yourself, please, and thank you, because if I don't see you and you sneak up on me, Jesus, be a whole fence, because I'm gonna freak out. Like, so I would definitely say, don't take a shower. You're now evidence, and definitely report. Definitely get the rape kit done, right? And then you definitely got to make a decision. Do you want to go as far as the criminal justice process? And if so, what does that look like? For some survivors, it's just as simple as getting a restraining order and telling this Negro to stay away from me. For
Right.
others, they want go all the way through and get real justice. So I think, as you have to define what justice looks like for you,
Mm-hmm.
and then go from there. For me, justice wasn't enough to get his ass locked up. All right, so you go spend some time in prison. Yay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, it was like, how do I use my voice and my story to help others and to amplify this issue, especially in communities of color? Like, how do I do that? That to me is justice. When I get to do these things, be interviewed, all of that's justice for me.
Yeah.
Him going to sit in prison wasn't going to be justice for me, because that's another Black family who's now without a
Mm.
father, another broken home, and I just didn't want to perpetuate that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that though. Like, what does justice look like for you? I think when I was raped and I went through the criminal justice system and they didn't take my case, I actually really appreciated the prosecutor. She was a white woman, but she was
Yeah.
like, listen, if you go this route, because she's like, I can keep going if you want me to, but if we go this route, just know you're gonna have to tell this story over and over and over and
Yeah.
over, and they're gonna tear it apart and
Tear
say, and
it
said, you know
apart.
what? I actually don't want that for you. So I don't know you, but I don't want that for you. And that's actually was like, okay, like I
Yeah.
think at the moment I was mad, but after I thought about it, I was like, Melissa, you can't.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to do that, and I think that was God in that whole process of like, you're okay, we can get justice in other ways. And that's why I started doing therapy, and I
Yeah.
really did focus on women of color who has been sexually assaulted or who have been in trauma. And that's why I do untoxify your relationships, because I do understand that this has happened to women in relationships, and there has to be some healing that needs to
Yeah.
take place. And so I like how you're just like, I do this because I go speak, I go do my things. This is my justice. My justice for me is teaching people healthy relationships. And if something has happened, it's not the end of the world. We can still get healing. We can still get, whatever
Yeah.
you need. We can still get there. Life is not over just because this one thing happened to you. So I love that. What does justice
Yeah.
mean for you? I'm still in it.
Catch it. Okay. No,
Catch it.
seriously.
Yeah.
I think you have to define it for yourself, because, again, if you're looking for a system to give you justice, well, we already know the system is biased and to people of color, right?
Listen,
We
listen.
know that. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's almost like you kind of set yourself up with this, because you're hoping that this, I'm going to be the case. Well, like historically, they've not done shit for people of color. You know what I'm
They
saying?
haven't.
Like we're always the ones that are the criminal. We're not the they're never seeing us as the survivor. You know what I'm saying? Like we've gone through it. And so like yeah, you got to define. You got to define what just and that to me is really how you begin to reclaim your power because then you start
Absolutely.
to realize, okay, I don't need a judge to validate what happened to me. I don't. I remember the day like it was yesterday and it's 11 years later. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't. I
Exactly.
don't need that external validation. I know what happened. You know what I'm saying? And so once you come to that conclusion, then it makes it easier for you to kind of navigate those waters and get to the other side. Because I always tell people there is really life after sexual trauma. Like, you can have a healthy relationship. You can go on and doing amazing things. It does not have to define you. You can redefine it. I'm a living testimony. Like I tell people, I was sexually assaulted 3 days before my birthday. For years, it felt like a dark cloud. Like I
Yeah.
could not celebrate my birthday. It was
Yeah.
just like, no, can't do it. Now, January 27th, I call it my rebirth day. Like it's the start of the birthday celebration. And
Yeah.
anybody that know me know like Leah gonna like January 27th is gonna be all on social media. Happy rebirth day. Like because it's the now I reclaim that part of my life. I've taken back that power. And I'm like, oh no, you don't get that. You don't get that. You don't get to have that over me where I'm still feeling like, oh, I can't celebrate and be my authentic self because you raped me 3 days before my birthday. No.
Yeah, that was part one of Leah's interview. We have part two coming out next week. Thank you all for listening. Tell your auntie, uncle, and cousin them. Episodes come out every Monday. Go ahead and listen every Monday. And also go listen to the old episodes. They're just as good as the new ones. Um, as always, stay classy, stay non-toxic, and I will see y'all next time. And stay tuned for Leah's second interview. Peace. Thank you for listening. Go ahead and share this episode with your family and friends. Don't forget to check out the quiz to figure out what your toxic trait is. The link is in the show notes. Thank you and see you next time.